Right, before we start, let's have a pop quiz and just see where we get with this then. Where was Jesus' home at this time?
Jerusalem.
On the road.
Capernaum.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And where did his family come from when they heard about what Jesus was doing? Yeah, well done, Paul. Yeah, Nazareth. Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, hands up if you knew that Jesus had brothers and sisters.
Yes.
Well, there is controversy in the book.
Yeah, it's not.
Well, there is controversy if you're a Catholic, I think.
They didn't have all that same dad though.
Pardon?
They didn't all have the same dad. That's true, that.
Well, it is true, yeah. Now, that is not many verses, to tell you the truth. 15 verses, but there's an awful lot in those 15 verses. And let's see, well, I'm going to be concentrating on family issues, really. We've already heard that, yes, I've already done it. Jesus' mother and brothers arrive. And the house is so full of people needing help that they send a messenger in to talk to him. Your brothers and sisters are outside asking for help, it says towards the end of the reading. And then Jesus, as we've heard, gives a bit of a funny reply. He looks around at the crowd and says, "Who are my mothers, or my mother and my brothers?" And then he says, "Here are my mother and my brothers. Whoever does the will of God is my brother and sister and mother." So a dividing line has formed. And prior to the arrivals of Jesus' mum and dad, we see the scribes and the Pharisees and the religious establishment from Jerusalem. They also are having a go at Jesus. But now, to our amazement, we see that Jesus' immediate family appear to have joined in the criticism, although their motives are different. The scribes say that Jesus needs to stop what he's doing because he's working with the devil. And his family says he needs to stop what he's doing because, put it bluntly, he's going mad. He needs to come home. He's not the Messiah, he's just a naughty boy. He needs to come home with them and get well again and be nice. The nice, inoffensive bloke that he always used to be. But on the other side of the line, there's a different group. They are the people who have heard what Jesus has had to say, that the kingdom of God is at hand. And they've believed in him. They've seen what he's done. They've become his followers. Many of them have been healed by him. And we know from other places in the Gospels that they aren't just respectable Jews. They're tax collectors, prostitutes, cripples, blind beggars, and the marginalised, men and women. But what unites this crowd is a deep desire to do the will of God, and the belief that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, because God is so obviously with him. This belief has become the deepest conviction of their hearts, and because it is their deepest conviction, they form a new set of family relationships with others who share that same conviction. And these relationships quickly become deeper than anything they've experienced before, even in their blood families. And the same thing happens today. People fall in love with Jesus, they hear his story, read his words, and they get caught up with trying to do the will of Jesus. And they also get told that they're completely off their rocker. I mean, I remember when I accepted Christ into my life back in the day, in 1974, going over and telling my mother and my father that I found Jesus, and they thought I was completely off my rocker, an absolute nutcase. They thought I joined a cult. Maggie got even worse when she told her mum about it all. So it still happens today. But Jesus has a completely different way of looking at reality. He believed that God is a God of grace who pours out his blessings on all people. God wasn't going to wait until all Israel obeyed the law perfectly. He'd given them enough time through the ages, pointing to him as the way, the truth and the life. But they'd rejected God, Yahweh. God had already sent Jesus. And because God is fundamentally a God of love and mercy, the heart of the law is love and mercy, which is what the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the rest of them had failed to recognise. At the heart of the law is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, body and soul, and love your neighbour as yourself, which they had single-mindedly failed to do. So Jesus taught people that if they love their God with all their heart and love their neighbour as themselves, as their brother or sister, they were then at the centre of God's will for their lives. And this certainly came across as being absolutely off the wall to the existing Jewish people at that time, who were so framed up by what the law told them what they couldn't do. They couldn't see the wood for the trees. They couldn't see God as a God of love. And it still comes across to us a bit daft today. What do you mean I'm supposed to love everybody? Do you know what that so-and-so has done to me? Do you know how badly he or she has hurt me? How can you possibly expect me to forgive and love him? And this, I think, is just as relevant now as it was back in the day. Church fellowships often get destroyed by bitterness, by envy, by argument, and by people walking out because he said or she said, etc., etc., etc. It's not hard for us to find example of what looks like irrational behaviour in the teaching of Jesus. And so we tone it down and make it more rational. We convince ourselves that we're not supposed to take his teaching literally. The problem is that that approach has never ever changed the world. It's never brought us closer to the kingdom of God. The world has never been changed by sane, moderate-sounding people whose message can be boiled down to, let me suggest that we might all like to be a little bit nicer to one another, and then we can get along tickety-boo, which basically means, if you're like me, we won't have a problem. I think the short answer to that is no. The world was changed by Martin Luther King, who put his life on the line because he had a dream. The world was changed by William Wilberforce, who said slavery should be abolished, even if it brought the British Empire to economic ruin, because it was a moral offence against the God who created all people in his image. The world was changed by Rosa Parks, who refused to give up her seat on a bus because she believed in justice for black people. The world was changed by Gandhi and his peaceful protest. The world has been changed by the action of the Tolpuddle Martyrs, 1834, who fought for the right of unions and workers' rights. The world has been changed by Emmeline Pankhurst, who highlighted the need for women's votes. The world has been changed by Mother Teresa and her selfless giving of herself to others. And we can go on with currently Greta Thunberg and not so long ago Malala Yousafzai, who won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2014 after being an attempted assassination by the Taliban, all because of educating women. Fundamentally, the world was changed by Jesus, who said and did the things he believed God was calling him to, even when people said he was out of his mind. And people tend to forget that Jesus wasn't crucified because he was nice to people. Jesus was counter-cultural, and that's what he calls us to be. People who don't believe in Jesus' vision are not going to be able to understand why you believe in it and work for it. But this is where the old-fashioned virtues of courage and persistence come in. The people I mentioned earlier and many more weren't content to be moderate. Instead, they were willing to be radical, to be counter-cultural, to do what was right, even if it cost them their lives. God is love, and love is costly, even if we choose not to see it, or do it, or live it. Jesus says, whoever does the will of God is my brother and sister and mother. Harsh as it seems, what Jesus is calling us to be and to do, that sounds just like the family that I want to be in.